Hello everybody, Chaz Large here with another video for you. Not a fix-it this time. Well, it's a sort of a fix-it. It's a recapping of this NAD amplifier. It's a 3020A, belongs to a family member, and they've asked me to replace all the capacitors in it. They bought a kit of all the capacitors, all the electrolytics that are in there, and some of the smaller capacitors. And as you can see by looking inside the beastie, there is an awful lot of capacitors to change. Now I've run it up quickly, give you a quick demonstration. It is working. I unplugged it for safety purposes. Let's plug it back in. We power it on, and we'll play a little bit of YouTube music. Oh, I'll tell you what, let's put the speakers on, we'll hear it a lot better. Now when I first turned it on, it was crackling like mad, and it was just a dirty control, so a little bit of contact cleaner in the control there. Give it that. It actually sounds fine. Can't hear any distortion, can't hear any problems with the speaker, with the sound from it at all, but he needs the caps plate replaced. That's what I'm going to do. So probably there's not going to be a lot of talking in this video. It's just going to be a lot of me headshots down, dismantling it, taking the caps out, putting the new caps in, working out which one of those goes where. Not quite sure how many there are, whether they're all needed, but it came from 80s, let's turn that down a bit, 80s hi-fi recap from Germany. Yeah, from 80s hi-fi classic guider. Apparently this guy does these recap kits, I should say. I'm trying to find the words this morning. It's a little bit groggy still from waking up not so long ago. Anyway, so this is going to take a little while, probably over a couple of days, because I've got various other things to do. It's a lovely day out, it's clear blue skies. I should probably be dashing off to do some gardening, walk the dog, feed the wife, you know, all the things that we do. Anyway, so bear with us while we change some capacitors. So it looks like, having just removed the top cover and put that away, wrapped up nicely because it's in pristine condition, I'll do my level best not to scratch it. Some people worry about stuff getting scratched. I try my best. 40 odd years, I've never had a complaint yet, but there we are. We'll do what we can to preserve the nice fascia of this amplifier, and well, of everything really. So I'm just going to unplug the speakers that I connected. That's my test speakers, and I think, having removed the top cover, I've basically got to dismantle this completely to get the circuit board out. I don't think there is a service hatch. Oh, I may be lucky in that. Yeah, I may be lucky in that I can actually just get around with removing the base cover. I did download the service manual, but there's precious little dismantling instructions in there, unless I haven't got the full manual, which is highly likely. So let's just see what happens. Yeah, looks like we can get at pretty much everything by just replacing the removing the bottom cover, which is quite nice. So yeah, looks like we can gain access to all the components all the way through. Just have a brief little look at what we've got. Obviously we've got the power amplifier bit here in the middle. So tilt it on the side, you'll also be able to see from the overhead we've got 4 big power output transistors, Darlington pairs. We've got 4 big capacitors in the middle there. Obviously main smoothing for you know, the plus and minus supply rails for the amplifier, and the rest are preamps and so on. So we've just basically got to work our way through it. Now apparently the instructions, one of the instructions that came with this kit was that proceed in order, desolder an old capacitor, solder in a new one, but also make sure that you make a note of the polarity of the capacitor before you take it out, or as you take it out, make sure you know the polarity of it, because most of these electrolytics are polarized, so you can't always rely on the circuit board to show you which way round it goes. So don't go pulling all the capacitors out before you even check which way round they come out. And most of them are quite clearly visible, but looking at the board, I can't see on the board any markings as to polarity for any of the capacitors. No, they all look, they're just put in there the way. Let's just have a little look at the circuit board underneath. Well, there's obviously nothing at all on the bottom side of the circuit board, so no clues there. So I just basically got to go through and put a marker on each capacitor as to which way round things are going to go. So I'm going to use a green marker to show positive. So I'm making a note of that in the video so that when I come back to it and say, now what is green? I'm going to write it on here. The green dot equals the plus side. I think that's the easiest way of doing it. I suppose I could do black for negative. Now let's make green positive. So just basically go around each one with a green dot. Now looking at that, in fact, I can actually see a little bit more clearly areas. Let's just bring the close-up cam in to show you that, if we can see that. Actually on the board there is a circle underneath the capacitor there, you can see, with a black line. The black line indicates the negative. Yeah, we can actually see that on several of the capacitors there. So I couldn't really see that clearly on the other side, but I'm still going to go around and put my green dots on just to make double sure that what's in there is what's going to go back in there is the same way as what came out, effectively. Because I have had circuit boards where components have been put in the opposite way around. The circuit board was wrong because of a modification, and apparently this 3020A, they did do modifications during production. So even though they use the same circuit board, they made changes to the way things were. So it would be quite possible we may come across a capacitor that's got the positive in the black line. So that's where I'm going to mark the green dots. So this is just going to be triple careful on that respect. So more green dots. Have I done those? I found these long tipped or long nib markers on I think I got them from Alibaba, set of 10 whatever in different colours. So very useful because they've got a very long tip on them. Just perfect for doing this sort of job. Just got to get a little bit more light in there so I can see what I'm doing. Some of these are going to be really quite hard to get at. You missed that bit, Martin. think apart from those 4 in the middle there, I think I managed to mark all the positives. I thought I'd done that one, but it didn't seem like I did. Oh, that one's well, the other way, so that's a bit difficult. I'm just double checking that I've marked all of them now clearly. There's a little bit of grease on some bits of it. Yep. Yep. They are all done. Okie dokie, right. So basically here we are starting the recapping, and I better not talk too long because I've got some music playing in the background, so I'm going to shut that off and just let the music play behind me. Right, we're about halfway through this recapping of this NAD amplifier. Basically all the caps in the preamp side of things have been replaced, and I'm checking the voltages across the output. That's the DC offset alignment. It's slightly out, but it hasn't been really running for about 5 minutes, but it's nearly there. We've been okay so far, I think, is the answer. I don't think there's going to be any problems. We've just got to move on to the main amplifier power side of things with the rest of the capacitors. As you can probably see over here, there's still quite a few to go, but there's a lot that's been done. So I will move on. Okay, just had a thought, before we actually move on, we ought to check all the 3 inputs that we've done replacement of the capacitors. This is the auxiliary input, and it's working fine on both of those. So we'll turn the volume down, we'll switch it over to the tuner input, which is the next one here. Switch on to tuner. And that seems to be working okay on the tuner input as well. So no problems there. Okay, I have now finished replacing all the electrolytics that I could find in this amplifier. As you can see, there are many electrolytics in this electrolytic capacitors in this amplifier, and the kit of components that we've got has actually given us quite a few spares that we don't have. And I think basically what the guy who supplied the spare parts kit did was basically go to the manual and find every single electrolytic that's listed and supply replacement for those. So there's variations on a theme in these amplifiers. This is a 3020A. The circuit is sort of part 3020 and part 3020B, so there's bits that don't make sense, bits that are missing on it, and bits that just are different. Anyway, so I've replaced all the ones that are put in there with the correct values, slightly higher voltage ratings. This is basically what the kit is. There's a couple that were not there that we could have used other devices for, other capacitors for, but I actually had the exact right values for them rather than go way over what they should have been. So I've put those in instead, so it's going to be, you know, a couple there. Now I checked after I'd done all the preamp side down this side of the amplifier. I checked it and it was working fine. I finished off replacing all these other capacitors, and then I tried it and got a little bit of a surprise. It's working, so it didn't go bang, lots of magic smoke or anything, but it does not work properly. There is a fault on the right hand channel, so let me show you what that is. Hopefully you'll be able to hear it on the microphone. So if I turn it on to start with, you can hear not what I would call a thump, but a noise. Yeah, and that's mainly on the right hand channel. Now I've got the volume turned down to minimum, so there's no and I've got no input. I've got an input connected to it, but no music playing through it. But if I turn the bass up, you get that. It's kind of a feedback. And if I actually play some music through it, we're on the where are we, on the auxiliary input. I think we're on the auxiliary input. Yes, we are on the auxiliary input. Why haven't we got any sound? Volume's halfway. There was output before. On the auxiliary input? No, I'm not. I'm on the tape input. That's why you're not hearing anything. It should be tape. Right. So it's definitely working. I just had looked at the wrong sockets. Let's play some music through it. So we're on the tape playback. So it's playing, but the bass out of the right hand speaker is horrendous. It's really bass all the time. It's like the filtering's wrong. But I tested all the preamp side of things, but there is other parts of the preamp which are over here. Now I did some other testing before I got to this point on the video, and I thought, right, I'll show you what I did to show you where we are. I'm going to turn it off for a minute. That's another problem. You get that thump when you switch off. Again, only on the right hand channel. In the amplifier, in this particular amplifier, you've got what's known as a lab side of things where the filter goes through, so you can actually on here bypass the built-in preamp or use the preamp as a separate thing. And if you put sound into just the normal input instead of from the preamp, you get no problems. So basically we're disconnecting the preamp from the output stage. If I can get these links out, they are rather tough to get out. Where's my pliers? I can't get my fingers in there. Who's nicked me pliers? There they are. So if I take this link out here, now if I turn the amplifier on, I suppose I ought to tidy things away before I carry on demonstrating, but if I now turn the amplifier on I get a little bit of a thump on speakers, but nothing massive, and it's the same on both. I can hear the sound from both sides. But if I turn the bass up, even with the volume down like I had before, nothing. There is nothing. So we're working purely on the output stage. Now I can, with care, if I power it down to start with and then turn the volume right down on my media and plug this into the normal input, which is the output from the preamp, into the normal input, and then turn it on, and now turn the volume up a little bit. The volume control is irrelevant because that's in the preamp side of things. So I'm now feeding straight into the main power amplifier, bypassing all the preamp stages, volume, bass, treble, etc. Sound is fine. There's no excessive bass. So I know the fault is not in the main output stage, it's somewhere in the preamp side of things. This is what we've got to try and identify now. So I'm going to again turn it off, put those links back in. But what I need to do in order to be able to sort this problem is to identify where on that circuit the problem lies. And again, this is where one of the other problems is the circuit diagram is different for different models depending on where you're going from and to. So if we look at just the 3020B circuit, you've got normal in, preamp out, and lab in. We could put signal into the lab input which goes directly into the drivers. I don't particularly want to do that because that's a lot less coupled. So I'm pretty certain that the preamp is where the fault lies. So if we go to the preamp side of output, we've got the balance control is directly across the two input side of things. So the balance control there is actually on the input of the preamp output. Does that make sense? Or the input to the output stage. On the output of the preamp is where the balance control is. If we go back a stage of amplification, we've got the volume control. So what I intend to do is, in the good old days when I was taught how to do audio fault finding, is a method called the half split method. So you basically start off by taking the circuit, split it down the middle, starting with the middle and working forwards or backwards. So if I split down the middle, as I've already done effectively, I've divided the output stage from the preamp, so I've now got to divide the preamp half split. So the best place I can think to do that is in the volume control, which is directly after the switches of the different modes, yeah, of the different inputs rather. And we've got two volume controls, and then they feed into like a pre or output preamp output driver stage. So what I intend to do is to disconnect the output of both volume control on the pot here and inject a signal there, and well, if I basically disconnect that and see if I get this, it will tell me whether the fault is after the volume control or before. Does that make sense? Okay. Yeah, now I'm going to unplug it from the main, or power it off from the mains, and the volume control is here, and so the input goes to the top end of the pot and the one side of it goes to ground. Okay, so basically we've got the volume control here, there's the bottom side of the volume control, those two, and those two are the top side, and that's the output. So basically what I'm going to do, and it's on a ribbon cable, goes there to there, there to there, and so on. So I'm just going to disconnect these two here. So I've got no input from the output side of things, just the preamp that follows on from the volume control. Let me see if I can get that on as a diagram. Here we are. So we're going here, this is where the volume control is here, and that goes out through this preamp, pre-drive, I don't know what you want to call it, before it gets across there. There's the balance control, and then there's the preamp output. That's where that link is on the back of the amplifier. So this, by disconnecting this point, we'll be able to isolate whether the fault is in this side of the circuit or whether the fault is in there. I suspect, I mean, I've triple checked all the capacitors that I replaced, made sure that A, they're the right value, and B, they're the right way round. The only thing I haven't done is actually checked the individual capacitors for, you know, the capacitors. There could be one faulty capacitor in amongst all those that we've got in the kit. So it could be just, but I've been over eyeglass looking over the circuit board for dry joints, for blobs of solder I might have spilled, something like that, bits of wire that I may have snipped off of components that I've changed and shorting out on anything. Can't find anything anywhere, so there's nothing visible on this. And I think if I'd have done something silly like that, then the thing would have basically blown its top. So anyway, let's get this bit out. Let's get rid of that diagram. Soldering iron and desoldering tool. So we are switched off at the mains, so I'm going to disconnect these two, which are the two inputs, because I could easily just take the whole thing out, couldn't I? Might be the easiest way. Take the whole ribbon out. Put it back when I'm finished. Right, that's the ribbon cable out completely. So the volume control is totally isolated from the output stage. So we can power on, turn it on. Right. Now that tone control is further back, I think. Or is it not? Let me just turn that off a minute. I've just got to remember where the tone control is on here. Right, so it's at this point that we can see that the circuit is a little bit confusing. On the top there you can see the 3020B diagram, which has not got any of the tone controls, and if you actually look at the service manual, you'll see that there are no tone controls fitted. I'm not sure quite what the rest of the amplifier looks like. It looks like it should have those controls, but they're not there, and the circuit shows that they're not there. So down the bottom half of the diagram there you can see that we've actually got the original 3020, but it's not a 3020A, but it might be, because some of the components are marked correctly and some aren't. Anyway, the point is we've now got the volume, troubleshooting split at the volume control. We're still getting the problem occurring, and therefore it's got to be after where the volume is rather than before. So at least we've narrowed it down to that area around about Q502, 504, 506, etc. And we'll carry on with it there. But C5, let me just have a look now. We've got electrolytics around here. Zoom in. So the right hand channel, unfortunately I can't tell which is, oh that's left, there's right. So the right hand channel is going to be here. So 0.68 microfarad. Yeah, now that 0.68 microfarad was definitely changed for a 0.68 microfarad. Now, yep, C529, yeah, 528, 527 it says there. So that was my meter beeping. Let me turn that off. Now, in the kit of parts that came, kit of capacitors, there wasn't any 0.68 capacitors, 0.68 microfarad capacitors. So what was in the kit was 1 microfarad bipolar capacitors, and that's what I fitted to start with. And they are down here. Let me just get some light on the subject down there. Did I put them? Yeah, that's definitely in the right way, and that's definitely in the right way. And I replaced 0.68 with 0.68 50 volt capacitors. So what I'm going to do now is, now I know where they are, and we know that the fault is in, well, I've just got to be very careful because there's bits of circuitry around here with live mains on. I'm putting my hands where things could get nasty. So you can see what I'm measuring, I'm going to put my other meter on. Right, so I'm going to go for ohms to start with. To one side of the base control, 5.1, 5.2, top side 0.5, 0.5. Right, so if I turn this on, still 0.5, still 0.5. We can see the base feeds off the middle. We've got a 3.3k to ground. No. See, 517, 518. Did I change those two? No, so because they don't exist. There's two I changed, 529, 530. There's that one there and that one there, two different values again. I wonder if what we're seeing is some kind of oscillation. Right, well, this amplifier has been a right PITA. It had developed a fault where you increase the bass and it went into sort of like a woo 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 type thing. The fault was in part of the preamplifier circuit, and there was a danger that every time I turned it on, if the bass was turned up a little bit, it was a woof on the speakers. It was damage the output stage or even blow my speakers. So what I did, I fixed it. Okay, I fixed it. Here's what I did. On the back of the amplifier, you've got the loop throughs from the normal in and to the preamp out into the normal input. If you disconnect that, it basically isolates the power amplifier, so you can put your own signal into the normal in and get output through there. You've got to be careful because obviously there's no control, because all the volume controls, tone and everything is all on the preamplifier side of things. So because I was pretty certain that the power amplifier wasn't at fault, I gently introduced a little bit of signal in there and the amplifier seemed to be fine. What I then did is I took this little old tester that I've had for ages. It's basically a it's a Bluetooth speaker, but it's also, you can play back music from a TF card, or you've got line in. And what I did is I took the input to this from the preamp out, once I disconnected that, and played signal through it, and I got the same fault when I adjusted the bass control, but on this. So this was easy to turn right off and isolate. I would have quite happily lost that. It cost next to nothing. I think 13 quid. I bought it years ago from somewhere. It sits on top of a laptop, so that you can get speakers on a laptop, and the little rubber feet have just dropped off. So anyway, that came in very handy as like a little test amplifier, and I then worked my way around measuring waveforms and circuitry on the preamp side of things. Came round to this area here, which is the bit just before it goes into the main power amplifier, or the output, effectively the almost like the driver, the pre-driver if you like, to the amplifier. And the fault was definitely around on this side. I suspected at one stage one of the transistors was going into self oscillation, and I could actually tap it and get a kind of a ring from it. But checking voltages was not really relevant, didn't really show much. But what I then did is decided, after frustrating hours of disconnecting things, putting signals in, checking waveforms and that, is I decided to see if we can do something physics wise. So I got a can of freezer and my hot air gun, and I froze the area. The fault jumped out, I warmed it up, it disappeared. When the fault was there, I could tap the board and I could get the fault to sort of come and go, and it basically turned out to be a dry joint. As simple as that. Let me just turn that off for a second, and because of where it was, I couldn't see for sure exactly where it was. Let's just tilt this camera up so you can see, but it was in this area here somewhere. If there was a component with just perhaps a fine fracture around it, you just wouldn't see it. It's less than a hairline. So I basically did a resoldering area of this whole area on this channel, and the fault was cleared. I can't make it come back. I can heat it up, cool it down, the fault won't come back. So as far as I'm concerned, this is now fixed. All I've got to do now is basically put it all back together. As you can see, I had to take pretty much all of it apart, the bar that goes across the bottom of the front panel. I got to the point where I thought it might be the bass control itself, so I dismantled that, put it back in. That was all done. I've re-cleaned all the controls, so all the controls are now working fine. So basically all I've got to do now is put it back together. Right, well, it's been partially reassembled. I've just got the top and the bottom to put back on, but it's been working fine. Occasionally turning up the bass, working absolutely perfect as it should do. Treble as well. Loudness gives a little bit of an extra thump too. So all the controls are working. Yeah, the old power LEDs on the front are just about flickering. I don't want to turn it up too low because it can upset the neighbours. Final sort of test, I've tested the radio and the tape inputs again. They're all working fine because I cleaned up the control, the switches as well. So they're never going to be perfect, but I managed to get some deoxit cleaner, switch cleaner, whatever you want to call it, into those controls. So the last thing is to test the turntable, the phono input, and I dug out my old Kenwood mini turntable. It sits on top of a pile of stuff back there, but it comes in very handy for testing. So why don't we have a little bit of good old bit of ABBA and take a chance on me. Let's switch it to phono. So
if you change your mind, take a chance on the first thing.
So obviously I won't do that for very long, because obviously I don't want a content match on the video, but I want to have a little listen to it here. Yep, that certainly seems to be playing okay. Now I've got it set to, I think it's moving coil setting. Let's switch it to moving magnet. Don't think it'll work. Yeah, that's interesting. It's only working on one channel. I think possibly that's the only control I haven't cleaned, is that switch at the back. So it's a good job I did a test. So it's always wise to test everything that you've done. So I don't know whether this will get a content match or not, but so a thing I got off of eBay some time back, Hi-Fi Weekly's demo disc, Hi-Fi speakers check, comes in very handy, but it's mostly voice, so I should be able to leave this going. Whoops. Right, why aren't we going? Yeah, press cut again. That should drop down and we should have BBC type announcer voice.
Have been devised by Hi-Fi Weekly.
Oh, of course it's on.
To assist
you in checking the connections of your hi-fi system, and additionally to provide a sample of the fascinating dummy head stereo technique. The best results will be obtained.
So I'm pretty sure it may well be that switch, so let's give that switch a clean.
Will be at a point approximately 8 to 10 feet from each speaker. Channel identification.
Yep.
This band is used to identify the left and right hand channels of your stereo system. At the moment, my voice should be coming to you from the right hand speaker.
And it is.
If this is not the case, take the following action. To the terminals marked right and make further adjustments to the wiring of the amplifier.
Right, it's now coming out on the left hand channel. So after cleaning that switch,
as a final check that your connections are correct, my voice should now be coming from the right hand speaker. If all is well, you should now proceed to the next test.
Anyway, there's some quite useful little demos on that disc. If you ever come across one of these, it's worth keeping hold of it for testing purposes. There's obviously different channel checks, and on the other side there's some different sounds like woodworking, growling grapes, winding up of an engine, space sounds, and various things that you can use for testing. And they're all 33 1/3 on that side. I think the same on both sides. So it's a BBC Records and Tape Best of BBC TV and Radio. Thank you very much for that. So that obviously is working. Now there is a hum, but I'm guessing that that is because this isn't earthed or this isn't grounded properly, because if I put my hand on it, the hum disappears a little bit. It's sitting right next to a lot of mains orientated. It's only on the phono input. So let's turn that down, go back to auxiliary. No hum. So it's just going to be on the phono side of things. So not to worry with that. It seems to be working absolutely fine. So I'm going to leave it running for a little bit longer, get it to a nice temperature with the lid on, and then just do a final check of the DC levels as per the manual. Now there's various thoughts about whether the manual is absolutely correct or whether you should adjust it, but the pots on here are actually sealed. So they've been sealed in the factory, so I'm not going to adjust those because those transistors are, it's only the capacitors I've changed. I'm pretty certain that I'm going to leave that alone. I don't want to go delving into there, because if I break that seal and the pot then gets damaged, I've got to replace the pots. So let's leave that as it is. I'm pretty sure when I checked it before, after I tested it, I made a note of it that the half of the DC offset was 26.1 on both channels, so it wasn't too bad. So I was quite happy with that. So anyway, I'll check that later on, but as it is, I'm pretty certain this is now fixed, ready to go back to the owner. So thanks very much for watching. Hope you've enjoyed this little rigmarole into what started off as a fairly simple fix by replacing all the capacitors, ended up being a delve into fault finding as well. I quite enjoyed it actually, because it took me back a long time since I've done decent fault finding like that, even if it did turn out to be a dry joint, but it was still a fault. Thanks very much for watching. See you next time.